Emptiness. Pluto is all about emptiness. But like all the outer planets, they're so ironic and paradoxical because it's in emptiness that we're able to achieve fullness. So, first and foremost, it's probably a good place to start to just talk about the relationship of the planet Earth. This is a sphere, this is an astrology sphere right here, to Pluto. They are directly oppositional. In fact, there is no greater enemy to quote unquote life on Earth than Pluto. A good place to start is to simply look at the most popular symbol of Pluto and look at that cross, which we know means matter. Look at a tree of life with planetary correspondences. Look at Malkut and the symbol of Earth and that cross of matter that is ensouled. There's a circle around it. Now, go back and look at that symbol of Pluto, where the cross is at the bottom, and then almost like the head is cut off, the soul rises. That's soul, S-O-L. Look again at the symbol of the sun. So it's literally rising above matter, and it is cut off from it. You look at Pluto almost as an angel of death. And fundamentally what this planet does in so many different ways is that it pierces to the core of something and then it brings it to the surface. Pluto in death pierces in to grab the soul and it removes it from the mortal coil. Pluto pierces into the depths of one's shadow and unconscious and brings those things to the surface. Pluto is associated with getting to the bottom of things and hidden truths and mysteries. Pluto is a Scorpio's penetrating gaze, trying to understand the core of somebody and bring it to the surface. Pluto in so many ways is about piercing into something and then bringing it out. And that's Pluto. Conversely, the planet that rules Taurus, the opposite sign of Scorpio, will find through very intuitive, realistic reasoning to be the planet Earth, which is all about taking things in and then burying it within. I've made a post in this forum about how that's not necessarily a bad thing, and that post is entitled, I believe, Earth and its Moon versus Saturn and Pluto. So that's something to check out. But it's to be understood that to come into existence, first we have all of the rays that are collected to the quote-unquote intelligence of intelligences, right? The moon, okay? The moon receives all of the different rays, and it's the womb of creation. And then the moon, which is the closest of any sphere to Earth, is the intermediary that brings those rays into physical form, which is matter, which is signified by the planet Earth. So Earth is that process of taking things that are at the surface and then ensouling it and burying it inside of something. I think that there's something to be said there for even the process of making a talisman. Because what is a talisman but an object which has spirit ensouled into it, into a structure of matter, so that it can persist in a consistent way. That's what Earth's all about, is keeping things the same and keeping things consistent and stable and the same. That's what a talisman is. We're taking a particular election and the energies associated with that, and we are preserving it in a structure such that that election persists past its point of expiration, and we can have that energy beyond that point. That's what a natal chart is. A natal chart is basically us as a talisman. We are talismans. We are born on a particular, let's say, election, and then that energetic being persists throughout our entire life. It's not like the natal chart just goes away. So it gives stability and consistency and form, protecting us from the process of evolution. And that dynamic interplay between Pluto and the Earth is really at the deepest core of what life is about. On to emptiness. This is something that was really interesting to me, as is a quote from Erykah Badu, who is the lady they say that ruined Andre 3000. And she's a double Pisces, lovely lady. And she said, evolution is elimination. You know, she's kind of a spiritual lady. Maybe she's into astrology. Seems like the type that would be into especially modern astrology. But I don't think she realizes how much of what she said is so insanely Plutonian. Evolution is elimination, and it's not necessarily even very pleasant, but it's so critical. And just to share some anecdotes of emptiness, of some things that have been happening over my life over the past year or so, certain realizations. Probably the most telling example of what I'm trying to express here is that I was in trade school. And I knew that I wanted to set up my resume as well as I possibly can and have particular people associated with that school that can really vouch for me so I can make it easier to get a job in the future and get a high paying one. So I made sure to completely bust ass in a completely over the top way to where it's guaranteed that I'm the definitive best ever at that school, which I did. That year was a year-long ego orgasm. I was getting people so pissed because I was everything that you could compete over, I slammed dunk. I was the best at everything. So much so that my teacher, I went in one day. He's got I made a project, and I made a little what do you call that, stencil of myself, and I put that as a portrait on my project, you know, for like future classes to remember me by and shit. I go into his office, and my framed stencil is on his wall. It was a year-long ego orgasm, but a lot of work went into that. And part of it was just, I wanted that feeling of being just absolutely the best. And it was a landslide, and, there's certain people who competed with me, and I just, devastated them. The funny thing is, now after the completion of school, although it was the biggest ego blowout I've ever experienced, just everything went my way, it doesn't satisfy. It's not like I look back on that and I'm able to derive happiness from it. It was a moment in time, and then it passes. And then there's just kind of an emptiness associated with that. I go to a Brazilian steakhouse, and I have some of the best meat I've ever had in my friggin' life. So good. Just explosions and supernovas in my mouth. And then at the end of it, maybe not, but a couple minutes after I stopped eating, it's like, well, that's over now. That's in the past. It's not happiness, it was just fleeting pleasures. Sexual experiences, you have them, and then it's over, and then there's emptiness. Romantic experiences, it starts out really magical, and then the magic is kind of just lost. And that's usually the case, is there's a big backswing, and certainly the butterflies go away, and then it becomes much more a practical affair. All of those things are stuffing your face with the indulgences of the world and still feeling empty. Celebrities, they chase fame, and they get it, and they get it in a major way, and then finally they're happy, except they're not happy. That's the thing. There's an emptiness there. We keep chasing things, and then we're empty. Nobody wants to work with Pluto. Nobody even wants to. If they want to, it's usually in one of two cases. One, they want to use it for baneful magic, or two, they have reached such a rock bottom point in their life that they're just in a state crazy enough that they want to work with that planet and just be reborn entirely. That's a very rare thing. It's doubly rare for them to even be a magician in the first place that has the means to do that. So nobody wants to work with Pluto, and people usually don't. But the funny thing is, in the pursuit of happiness, that planet, which is the most agonizing, extreme, painful, traumatizing planet, is the most important planet to work with. And I've said in the past that only the wisest would wear a Pluto talisman, because you'd have to be wise or otherwise extremely foolhardy and self-destructive to carry that energy with you. It's devastating, and it will knock you on your ass. But Pluto, as I said, is all about emptiness. You know, I've seen no shortage of people associating the Sephira Da'at with Pluto and the 0 point. Pluto certainly is the 0 point, and emptying things out. In everyday life, it doesn't necessarily look like that. Pluto, most people have picked up on that Pluto's a force of evolution, and I think that when people think of Pluto, they think of it as basically just being something that takes you out of a situation in your life that's not to your greater good and progresses you along. And in the zoomed out view, that is true. But the question is, there is evolution there. But what are you evolving to? Does it end at getting to your life purpose? Because it is a guarantee that if you were to live on and on and on, that life purpose, quote unquote, would cease to bring you happiness. Everything in this life is gum. You chew it, and it loses its flavor. And then you chase after the next step. And if we lived long enough, we will have chewed all the gum, and everything will have lost its flavor. And that is a point in time that you would know true emptiness. But Pluto empties things. And this has been the experience of the magicians in stellar sorcery who have made Pluto talismans. They say to themselves, this talisman is horrible. It's cursed. It's demonic. It's extremely malefic. It's gonna be demonic. Pluto is what brings the depths of darkness to the surface. It's very much indicative of how many in the occult are very intellectual, but lack the wisdom of foresight to know how to use the tools at their disposal. Because Pluto is, they say, the Lord of death and rebirth, and surely it is, but it's also the Lord of alchemy. It brings true lead to the surface for us to make true gold. Pluto is the path to the Philosopher's Stone, and it empties things out. Now, why would you call upon an energy of something that empties you out? Well, nothing can really be empty. Nothing can really be empty unless we put a form around it. Let me say that one more time. Nothing can truly be empty unless we put a form around it to block God out. Because the moment that that form has dissolved, it's all God. And in emptying out that cup of form and persistent structure, which is the Earth, which is the opposite of Pluto, by using that opposite energy, you have emptied yourself out to be filled with God. And it's in that moment that you know what real happiness is and real contentment. We need to empty ourselves out of all persistent structures. That means attachments. That means things you identify as. This is Pluto's end game. People will call upon Pluto and they will say, why are you taking away from me everything that I love? And that's what it could seem like, you know? And that's what it's been in my life. Pluto pops up and I'm really into something, and then it shows problems, trouble ahead, or it just rips it out entirely, or it makes a situation untenable. It's like, why this thing that I love do you take away from me? Pluto is supreme, ultimate wisdom. This is the planet that is making the most concerted effort to get you closer to, let's say, God, let's say the Tao, let's say the All. But in order to do that, all those things that you think you love, which are just gum, that lose their flavor, obstacles, distractions, need to be eliminated, because evolution is elimination. That's the truest evolution. That's how you get to the point that you can hang out in Kesher. Almost nobody can hang out in Kesher. They all have form. They all have attachments. They all have identity. They all have relationships. They all have desires. They all have ambitions. And Pluto is the death of all those things. It's divine emptiness. It is emptying the cup of your being so that it can be filled with God. And that can very much resemble surgery. There is something so surgical about both Pluto and Scorpio, and very healing. But the real healing, and to really do the real healing, you need to penetrate deep to the source without necessarily a lot of anesthetic, and then you just got to rip that fucker out. That ego, which is one of the greatest structures and attachments that are an obstacle to divinity. It sits on your head like some kind of, creature from Alien. right? And it just burrows its little tendrils into your skull, and Pluto will rip that out, and that'll be excruciatingly painful. But that's the emptiness, divine emptiness. That's who Pluto is, and it raises the question if anyone has the foresight and perseverance to undertake that challenge of working with that planet in a constructive way. Because the secrets of alchemy, it's not Saturn to the sun. That's a very insidious lie, but understandable misapprehension. Alchemy is Saturn outward to God, because of course it is. Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, the abode of the fixed star, Suprema Mobile, Quorum Imperium. Hey, look, that's where God is. Pluto is the lord of alchemy. And alchemy is the secret. And Pluto is the meaning. What is the meaning of matter? What is the meaning of matter? I mean, if you were to remove the essence from matter, what would be the meaning of the matter remaining? Matter is meaningless. Matter, if you let the planet Earth as an astrological energy run amok, that's how you devolve back into literally a mineral. That's how you devolve back into an animal, and then a form of lower consciousness, a form of lower consciousness. Pluto is the expansion of consciousness, and it's what renders you unmoored consciousness. That is in the symbol of Pluto. The matter separated from the consciousness. Unmoored energy. And that is the meaning. The meaning behind this stuff is not the matter. It's the energy behind it. And it becomes increasingly meaningful the closer to God it is. Why meaningful? Because God is joy. The Tao is joy. Pure love and source is joy. What are we here for if not joy? And alchemy is that process. And Pluto is the lord of alchemy. So, something to chew on. Pluto, not a bad guy. Real pain in the ass. But really, really, really healing, and really the most important planet that nobody wants to work with.